Welcome back, everybody. Episode 6. Is it episode 6?
I have no idea.
Either way, welcome to the newest episode of the Ryan and Log Fantasy Show. As always, I am Ryan.
And I am Logan.
And today we will be going through 2 new segments of the show. We'll be going through, first off, we're going to do with studs and duds. We're going to go through guys this week that we believe are going to be good options for your fantasy teams, or guys that are just impersonating really good starts and just probably going to drop off or not do as well. And then we're going to finish it off with some trading, since the deadline's coming up in most fantasy leagues. Some guys you should probably try to trade for, and some guys you should try to trade away. So Logan, we're going to start off with some studs and duds. Who is a guy that you're looking at as a stud?
One guy I'm looking at this week would be John Brown for the Buffalo Bills. Arizona's secondary is beatable, but they have Patrick Peterson, who's a lockdown number 1 corner. I would expect him to be following Stephon Diggs, which should open up a lot for John Brown on the other side. Like, I look at a few weeks ago, Tyler Lockett against Arizona. They didn't throw to DK. Patrick Peterson locked him down, but Lockett had 20 targets and looked amazing.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good. I think I totally agree with that. I think John Brown really has a good matchup, especially. Oh man, I lost my place here. Who's Buffalo playing this week?
Arizona,
yeah. Like, Arizona has a very beatable defense, and that game is going to be a high-scoring game anyway. So if they're going to shadow a lot of, oh my gosh, I'm having a rough
Stephon
go.
Diggs,
yeah, Stephon Diggs.
Peterson.
Yeah, sorry. If Patrick Peterson's going to be like shadowing him a lot, it's going to leave John Brown with a lot of big opportunities to really get some big yardage. And as I said, like, Arizona has never really played a shutdown game at all this season. They've pretty much played very high-scoring games into the 30s, so I would expect John Brown to maybe get a touchdown and some big yardage. Okay.
Okay, so then who do you have this week as someone?
You know what? As much as it is being very homerish of my fantasy team, James Robinson for me is a big stud. Going up against that Green Bay run defense, it's not great. That run defense has just been shredded. Technically, as right now, Green Bay and Yahoo Fantasy is ranked as the second best running back matchup this week. So James Robinson, he's been a bell cow back all year for Jacksonville. He's shown that he can do it against some pretty stiff competition, and even when they get down in games, like when he was down against like Detroit or Miami, he still put up 28 points in a bad game script. So I don't think this game's close. I think Green Bay handles their business pretty easily, but I still think James Robinson's going to be heavily involved, and he's going to get work. So I feel completely confident starting up James Robinson as an RB1 this week.
Yeah. Green Bay wants you to run the ball. Like, they play their defense, so they won't let you throw. They will force you to run, and Jacksonville's been happy to run this year. Like, they haven't been good, but they've still been running the ball a ton, and I think Robinson's going to do some good things.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you got any other guys that you're really looking at and saying, you know what, they're going to be an unreal play this week?
I think this is a guy you'd be starting regardless, but Robert Woods this week, going up against Seattle, that's a really bad defense. Cooper Kupp is going to play, but he's a little bit beat up. And Robert Woods, he's finally been getting the touchdowns this year. Like, that's the one thing that's been missing from his game for years, and he's getting them. So I love that start this week against Seattle.
I think another guy I'd be looking at for the Philadelphia Eagles is Dallas Goedert. I think Dallas Goedert this week is a really good play coming off the bye, so everybody is, if they're not already banged up, they're a little bit better. They're playing the Giants, divisional matchup. Those games are always going to be highly contested, and I think Carson Wentz figures it out a little bit and starts throwing the ball a lot more. And Dallas Goedert, he's one of their only options that he might even be really relying on. Even though Jalen Reagor's coming back and Travis Fulgham's there, I really think Dallas Goedert is going to have a really big game. I think you can start him up and feel really, really confident as a high-end tight end play this week.
Yeah, tight ends, especially Travis Kelce on bye, the tight ends this week are going to be rough, and Carson Wentz loves throwing the tight end. Look at the game that Ertz and Goddard missed, and Richard Rodgers was a great start.
Yeah.
So I think
if Richard Rodgers can become a top tight end option on your fantasy team, imagine what Dallas Goedert could do for you this week.
Yeah, he looked great to start the season before the injury. He should be fully back. He played. He had the bye week now. I think he's gonna have a great end of the season all around.
Mm-hmm. All right, so those are some guys. Actually, no, sorry, one more guy I want to bring up. Drew Lock, I think is a massive stud this week. Going against the Vegas Raiders. Like, the Denver Broncos just feel like that team almost all year that is just meh. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, they don't have anything that is flashy, but they score points. Like, the only game that they haven't scored, like, on over 20, they've scored over 20 for 4 or 5 games this season. And especially their last two, coming off a 31-30 win in Week 8, and then a 27-34 loss against Atlanta. Mind you, both those defenses are pretty bad. Vegas is no better. So
Yep.
Drew Lock, I think, is an easy lock-in as a type lock-in. See what I did there? That was by
Not good.
accident.
Not good.
That was not intentional. But yeah, he's an easy guy to start at the QB position. And you know what? Some guys might be starting them as just a week over guy, but you know what? With the rest of his schedule that he has, there's no game really I would feel overly like disappointed to start Drew Lock in if he keeps playing the way he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, their defense is not good. They've had so many injuries. They're going to have to put up points. And Locke has proven, especially in garbage time, he's fully capable of putting up some numbers. So I think he's a guy that quite often, if you start him, the first 3 quarters, you're going to look at it and say, like, oh, crap, what the heck am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
But then he's found a way to pull it out and actually have some great games based off of just some crazy garbage time fourth quarter stat lines.
Yeah, in his last 2 games, he's thrown at least 2 touchdown passes, and he's rushed for a TD. So it's like he can get it done both ways, which is good to know. So with some studs out of the way, unfortunately, there's going to be some duds. Every given week, there's some guys that you're feeling very confident in. Who are you not feeling confident in going into Week 10?
I mean, for me, one of the main ones would be DJ Moore. Like, with Curtis Samuel having the increased role, it's really bitten into his work. Like, you look at his last 3 games, 5 targets, 6 targets, then 3 targets, which is, it's definitely an issue. I think that Buccaneers defense, like, I mean, I said it last week, I think they're one of the best in the league. Them not showing up as the Saints doesn't change that for me, but I think they're going to come out pretty upset this week. They're going to be fired up, and I think it's going to be an issue for all those Panthers guys, but I think especially DJ Moore, if he's not getting the volume, it's going to be tough to bring one to the house.
You know what? I totally get that. You know what? DJ Moore is starting to almost... He's still one of the top 2 options on that team when McCaffrey's out, which it looks like this week he's not going to be playing.
Yeah, they've said hopefully next week he's back.
Hopefully next week. So that might be a good sign for DJ Moore. But even the past couple weeks, it looks like Curtis Samuel has just been taking work away from him and been getting a lot of targets and stealing touchdowns away from DJ Moore. So that's definitely a guy I would almost be looking away from. So I totally agree with you there. I think a guy for me, he's on my fantasy team, Adam Thielen. He's had 2 really bad weeks, putting up a little over 4 points in 2 straight weeks. Granted, these were against both divisional opponents in Green Bay and Detroit, but those games were close, and he's still putting up those numbers. Now we're going against a 3rd divisional opponent in Chicago, who has a way better defense than Detroit and Green Bay. And to be honest, if Minnesota gets their way, and it's a Dalvin Cook game, it's not good for either Jefferson or Thielen, especially Thielen, because they're going to shadow him a lot more than they would Jefferson. So that's, if you have to start him, I'm starting him this week just because I don't feel overly confident in my bench depth to start, especially like because Adam Thielen, he's one of those guys where he has wide receiver 1 upside. Because if he gets a touchdown, he gets 8 targets a game. He is an easy 15 points fantasy week for you on your team. But then there's going to be weeks where he does nothing like he did the last 2 weeks.
I mean, he's a great wide receiver, so I think it's hard to really put him on your bench, but he's a guy you got to kind of temper your expectations for this week.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any guy else that you're just saying is probably not going to work out?
Sorry, let me pull this up again. I mean, I think just weather-wise, you got to keep an eye on that Texans-Browns game. Those Texans seem like an easy group to fire up with Will Fuller. I mean, you're starting Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, but just I would be hesitant if the weather there looks bad. The weather in Cleveland seems to be iffy week to week, being right on the lake there. So I think they're calling for 20-plus mile-an-hour winds. Just be careful in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You know what? I think another guy that might might be a dud is Kenny Golladay. You know what? He's one of those guys that you look at, and he's an unbelievable talent. Nothing against that. Going up against the Washington defense, not saying Washington is unbelievably good, but Kenny Golladay, when healthy, is unbelievable. I still don't buy. He still has some questionable tags on him.
I don't think he's going to play this week.
He might not even play, but you know what? He hasn't been completely ruled out yet. So I don't think he plays, but if he does, stay away from him due to injury and just something like that. So I think even if he's healthy, don't put him in.
Yeah, Washington is weirdly a really tough matchup, and if he's even somewhat limited, that's going to be a pretty dicey start.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is almost going without saying, but anybody on the New England Patriots offense, kind of stay away from. Going up against Baltimore this week, it's nothing that you want to play around with. Even Cam Newton, it's just like there's nobody there that I feel even good enough to start.
Yeah, I think all those guys are guys you want to play the matchups with, and the matchup is bad across the board this week. So I think if you can, I'd pivot away from really all those guys.
Mm-hmm. All right, so with that segment, we're gonna wrap that one up, and we're gonna move on to some trades, because for the majority of fantasy leagues, it looks the trade deadline is either going to be this week or next week. So with that said, there are going to be some teams, if you're in keeper leagues, that are probably going to sell. And if you're in just even one-off leagues, maybe you're just looking to make a trade to bolster up your star power and maybe make some moves for a playoff push. Now, let's start off with some guys that you would be looking to trade for if you're in the hunt, or if you're looking to maybe make a play, maybe bolster up your roster for a deep playoff run.
I mean, one guy I'd be looking at who's been a little bit down, but I think it's looking up for him, would be Amari Cooper. Like, it sounds bad. The QB play there has been just atrocious.
It's so bad.
But coming out of the bye, Andy Dalton is expected to be back. And, I mean, I get it. Andy Dalton doesn't sound great. But the one game Amari Cooper started with Andy Dalton and had for the whole game 17.4 fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he got 10 targets. If Amari Cooper's getting 10 targets, he's going to be good. Like, he's too talented not to be. And I think he's a guy right now you could buy for a lot less than he's probably should be worth, coming off of a couple pretty rough games. So I think he's a guy, like, I'm not saying pay up. I wouldn't pay wide receiver one price for him, but if you can get him on the cheap, I think he's a good ad.
Yeah. And another thing to go with that is a really good play, because with how that Dallas team has looked since Dak has gone out, Amari Cooper's stock has gone really down. So I don't think you're going to have to pay a whole lot for Amari Cooper, depending on who you're dealing with. But if you can get him for wide receiver 2 value, maybe even low-end wide receiver 1 value, even though he's probably not there anymore, you can take a chance on it. And maybe, like you said, Andy Dalton he's not a great quarterback, but he's a guy that will just at least get you through the storm a little bit.
He's competent.
Yeah, he'll get the job done. He's not going to be unreal, but with Amari Cooper's talent, like you said, if he's getting 10 targets a game, he'll find a way to break for a 40-yard catch and maybe a touchdown.
Yeah, I think he's a guy, I look at him as a wide receiver 2 the rest of the way, which I think you can buy him for less than that with how he's played.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a guy that you'd have to look at, I feel like I'm doing this all night with guys on my fantasy team, but DJ Chark, I think if you have a chance to trade for DJ Chark, he's only had really 2 games this season where he's been unbelievable. He's had 2 games over 24 fantasy points. Other than that, he's just been very average. But he has been dealing with injuries. And to be honest, the reports that Gardner Minshew was playing the majority of the season with a broken thumb or a broken finger, whatever one it is, who knows if that was affecting maybe his accuracy or anything like that. And I really liked how Jake Luton looked. Even though it was against Houston, it was whatever. But if he can do it, I think this is the big test. If he can even look somewhat competent against Green Bay and be able to target, and it looked like Luton was targeting DJ Chark all game long against Houston.
Yeah.
So if that's going to keep up, I think you can get DJ Chark for a reasonable price. And I think for a team that if you're trying to bolster up your depth for a playoff push, I think that's some guy you could target, and he would be a really good asset in case of injuries might come in.
Yeah, that's a guy you kind of got to call your shot on, because we don't really know what the QB situation is going to be there, but he's a really talented wide receiver. Mm-hmm. So that's one where I feel like you kind of you've got to be in or out. There's no middle ground there. So if you're in, I think he's a great buy.
Yeah. And I think another guy to really look at, he's the star talent of Michael Thomas. He's only had 2 games this season where he's been healthy, and he's put up under 10 fantasy points. Depending, if this is a keeper league, it might be a little bit more difficult to get a guy like Thomas because with the talent there, the guy might just be willing to take a shot into next season. But if this is a one-off year, maybe you'll get lucky and you might maybe only have to pay low-end wide receiver 1 value or maybe even wide receiver 2 value. So I think with the rest of New Orleans' schedule and the fact that New Orleans knows that they need Michael Thomas to be very successful, Michael Thomas is going to, I think, really turn things around and become that guy that you drafted in first rounds really early. So I think he's definitely a guy. If you can kind of squeak in and trade for him, that could be unbelievable. Maybe the trade of the year in your fantasy league.
Yeah, I think now's the time to move on him because the 2 games he's played, he hasn't really been impressive. So I think there's still a buy low window here before he really breaks out. So if you're going to do it, I think that's a move you got to make pretty quickly.
Yeah, don't wait. I don't think you can afford to wait till after the 49er game because if he even shows any flashes of a Michael Thomas type game, you're not going to get him because he's going to be that guy that most people are going to want to hang on to and make a good run with.
One other guy I'd be looking on, this is more of a cheaper option, would be Mike Williams. The Chargers schedule down the stretch is nice.
I love that pick.
And with Herbert, he's willing to throw deep. Mike Williams is a deep ball guy and a red zone guy. So you got the touchdown upside, you got the deep ball upside, and he's been getting a lot of targets. Like his last 4 games have been 8 targets. There was a 3-target game in there, which is definitely concerning, but then 8 targets and 7 targets.
Yep.
So it's not...
The volume is definitely there.
The volume's there. He's a top 5 pick. Like, he's got serious talent. As long as he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a good play down the stretch.
Absolutely. Now, with those guys that you would be taking, who are the guys that maybe if you're in like us, you're in a keeper league and you're probably not looking good at this point, you're probably not going to make the playoffs, or maybe you're just deciding that it's time to move on and maybe try somebody else for a push. Maybe you're trying to hope that you can get name value for somebody. Who were the guys you're looking to bail on and saying, this time's done, the experiment's over, let's try something new?
I mean, if we're talking guys, are we talking guys we want to trade away or guys that we want to cut?
Guys you want to trade away. So guys that are on your roster that you would probably be like, yeah, you know what? Like, I think I got to move away from them before it's too late.
I mean, one guy I'd be looking at, this is a situation where you've got to get value for him, but I think Deshaun Watson, if you can move him for a better quarterback, that'd be a good option because the schedule is getting rough. Like, he's got Cleveland this week, but then New England, Detroit, Indy, Chicago, Indy. That's a bad schedule. So I think if you can move him, maybe get an extra asset and another good quarterback, I think that'd be a good option.
Yeah. And I think a guy you really got to think about moving away from is Mike Evans. Man, like with Antonio Brown coming to that team and Godwin being there and Gronkowski being there, I don't know who is the guy week to week on that team. And Mike Evans will probably still have the same role he's always had, and he could probably be a 12 point a guy game, maybe 15. But there could be the games I think is going to be more likely than not where he's just going to get 3 points.
Yeah, I think
6 points. He's not going to be that wide receiver 1 you drafted. So if you can get somebody to pay for name value for him, and maybe try and get a guy like a Robbie Anderson, or get somebody that like a DJ Chark, somebody that is a definitive number 1 in an offense that's probably going to throw a ball a lot, I think that's somebody you should probably look at.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that his role in that offense is going to be the most volatile. Like I think he has the highest ceiling week to week, but then also the lowest floor. So if you have good security in the rest of your lineup, he's a guy you can take a shot on. But if you need him to be a locked in, like safe wide receiver 1, I'd definitely be trying to move him for a guy with better target volume that you can be more sure of week to week.
I think another guy you could probably look at is Antonio Gibson. I think Antonio Gibson has played really well, but with the health of Kyle Allen kind of going into question almost every game.
Oh, he's done the year.
Is he done the year
Yeah.
now? Okay, sorry. I haven't been keeping up with Washington too much. But yeah, Alex Smith starting every game. Looks like they will target J.D. McKissic a ton. So I think J.D. McKissic is a guy to definitely look at getting. And if you have Antonio Gibson, I think you could probably get some good value out of him. Maybe get a guy that could be a little bit more reliable and a better offense.
Yeah, there's definitely concerns with that offense moving forward. Alex Smith, I mean, I'm a Chiefs fan. I love Alex Smith. He was my guy for a long time. Off the injury, he does not look very good. He doesn't look the same. I have legitimate concerns about that offense moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Now, is there anybody else that you want to bring up before we wrap it up?
That's it for my list that I have in front of me.
I think you're lying to me, because I think you told me pre-show that you were thinking about a certain quarterback that plays in the great state of Texas.
Already talked about him.
Deshaun Watson?
Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
Wow, I don't know where I've been. I've been out in the meadows because I am just zoned out right now. All right, so like you said, you have nobody else?
Yep, I think that's it for me.
I don't think I have anybody else either. So that's gonna wrap it up for this episode of the Ryan Log Fantasy Show. So we will put out a new video around Monday or Tuesday. Again, thank you for listening. Hopefully everybody has a good fantasy week and pulls out a victory. Except for Logan, he can always lose, because it would be always great to see. Kind of funny. But again, thank you for listening. If you could please hit the like and subscribe button, it'd be greatly appreciated. Also turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new videos. So, thanks for listening, and as always, stay classy.